Let me tell you about a moment that happened in a tunnel. Not on the pitch, not in front of cameras, in the corridor between the dressing room and the outside world, where nobody was supposed to be watching, because that's where the real story happened. You've seen Ronaldo score free kicks from 40 meters. You've seen him lift trophies, break records, cry in defeat, roar in victory. You think you know him. The media has given you a version of him for 20 years. The ego, the dedication, the obsession with greatness. But here's what most people don't know. The version of Ronaldo that exists when the cameras go off is something else entirely. And what happened that night in the tunnel with a young girl who couldn't hear a single word he said? That version? That's the one his teammates talk about when they're being honest. Let me paint the picture for you. It was post-match, the kind of night where the stadium is still buzzing, but the players are already mentally somewhere else. Ice baths, recovery meals, travel logistics. The adrenaline is dropping. The body is starting to feel everything it was blocking out for 90 minutes. These moments in the tunnel, they're transactional. Get in, get out, get on the bus. She was one of the ball girls, young, maybe 12, 13 years old, and she was standing just off to the side of the tunnel entrance, not in anyone's way, trying very hard to be invisible. But she was crying. Not sobbing. The quiet kind of crying. The kind where you're desperately trying to hold it together, but your face is betraying you. Here's where it gets interesting. Now, you have to understand what ball girls and ball boys actually are in the context of a professional football match. Their background, functionally invisible. They're there to keep the game moving, to retrieve the ball quickly, to stay out of the way. Nobody briefs the players on them. Nobody introduces them. They exist at the edge of the event, doing a job that matters but goes completely unnoticed. For most players walking through that tunnel, she was part of the scenery. Most of the squad walked past, not because they're bad people, because that's what you do. You're exhausted, you're in your own world, and you don't always register the details around you. That's human, that's normal. Ronaldo registered it. I've spoken to people who were there that night, and what they described wasn't a man performing generosity for an audience. There was no audience. There were a handful of kit staff, a couple of security personnel, and his teammates moving through in a blur. Nobody was watching Cristiano Ronaldo in that moment. Nobody had a phone out. He stopped. And I want you to sit with that for a second before I tell you what happened next. Because stopping, genuinely stopping, not slowing down, not half glancing, that's rarer than it sounds in that environment. Elite football operates on a rhythm. There's a schedule, there's a bus, there's a protocol. Players don't linger in tunnels after matches. The tunnel is a transition zone, not a place where things happen. It's the space between the event and the aftermath, and everyone in it is already mentally in the aftermath, except him. Think about what that means. This is a man who has spent his entire career operating under surveillance. Every meal photographed, every workout documented, every reaction analyzed. The instinct, after years of that, is to be constantly aware of how you look. Consciously or not. But the instinct that fired in that tunnel wasn't a PR instinct. It was something else. He walked over to her. And this is the part that matters. When he got close enough to realize she wasn't responding to him approaching the way most kids would, when he understood she couldn't hear him, he didn't retreat. He didn't do the awkward smile and move on. He didn't call for an interpreter or a staff member to handle it. He figured out another way. Now, here's the kicker. Ronaldo doesn't speak the language of signs. He's not trained in communication for the deaf. What he had in that moment was exactly what every footballer has: a body, presence, the ability to communicate without words, which, if you think about it, is exactly what football itself is. He crouched down to her level. He pointed to himself. He pointed to her. He mimed, clapping, thumbs up, a gesture that in any language, in any world, means, "You did well tonight. You were part of this." One of his teammates who witnessed it told me later, "We all just stopped. Bags in hand, halfway to the bus, and we just stopped." Because there was something about watching him figure out how to reach someone when all the normal tools were taken away. It said something about who he actually is underneath all of it. She looked up at him. And you have to understand what that moment is for a 12-year-old girl who is deaf, who has grown up in a world that wasn't designed for her, who spends a lot of her life feeling like she's watching through glass while everyone else is inside. And standing in front of her is possibly the most famous footballer on the planet, and he's not walking away, he's staying, he's trying. She stopped crying. But that's not all. Because here's what the people in that tunnel noticed next. He didn't immediately reach for a jersey or call someone over or perform the standard footballer meets fan routine that everyone recognizes. He just stayed with her, in the quiet. Two people who shared no language, no common world, almost nothing, except that they were both standing in the same tunnel at the same moment, and one of them had decided the other one mattered. That stillness lasted maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute. In tunnel time, after a professional football match, with a bus waiting and a coaching staff already running through post-match logistics, that's an eternity. Nobody said anything. Nobody moved him along. Everyone just understood without a word being spoken that this was not a moment you interrupted. This is where it gets deeply personal. Because Ronaldo didn't just gesture and move on. He took off his match wristband, the one he wears through every game, the one that's become almost a signature, and he placed it in her hands. He pointed to her wrist. He pointed to his. He pointed to the pitch. The message was clear even without a single word spoken. Take this. You were out there too. She looked at the wristband in her hands. Then she looked back up at him. And for the first time that night, she smiled. Not the polite, performative smile of someone who feels obligated to react correctly. The real kind. The kind that takes a second to arrive because it has to travel up from somewhere deep before it reaches the face. That smile. That's the moment everyone in that tunnel carries with them. Let me break down exactly why this matters beyond the obvious emotional surface of it. Ronaldo has been one of the most analyzed athletes of his generation. Every element of his personality has been dissected. The vanity, the competitiveness, the sometimes difficult exterior. And a lot of that analysis is fair. He is competitive to a degree that can be uncomfortable. He is demanding of himself and others. He has had moments where the ego was very visible. But here's the truth. The same psychological architecture that makes someone relentlessly, almost disturbingly driven toward perfection, that architecture doesn't turn off. It's not selective. When Cristiano Ronaldo decides something matters, it matters completely. When he's entirely in. In that tunnel, for those few minutes, what mattered was her, not the result, not his stats from the night, not whatever was waiting on his phone. Her. His teammates have spoken over the years about moments like this, not this specific moment, but the pattern. Gary Neville talked about it during his time at Manchester United. He described a Ronaldo that the public doesn't see, someone who would go out of his way, quietly, privately, for people around him. Rio Ferdinand has said similar things. These aren't men who have any incentive to mythologize Ronaldo beyond what's true. They're former teammates speaking about what they actually observed. What they observed consistently was a gap between the public version and the private one. And that gap is important, because the public version, the one that gets debated, criticized, celebrated, is built from the moments that are designed to be seen. Press conferences, goal celebrations, brand deals, award ceremonies. That version is real, but it's curated. It's Ronaldo performing being Ronaldo, which is its own kind of skill, but it's not the whole picture. The private version is built from a completely different set of moments. The extra hour in the gym after everyone else has gone home. The quiet conversation with a youth team player who's struggling. The wristband given to a girl in a tunnel. These moments aren't designed, they're not planned. They happen because of who someone is when there's no script and no audience and no reward on the other side of the action. Now, here's where it gets even better. Because the story didn't end in the tunnel. The girl's family, through the club's community team, was contacted afterward. She was invited back. Not for a photo opportunity, not for a press release, just invited back. To be in a space that had made her feel seen. Think about what that means. There was no announcement. No Instagram post with a touching caption. No carefully timed media release designed to soften some controversy or boost a public image at a convenient moment. It happened because someone at the club who knew what had happened in that tunnel thought it was the right thing to do. That's all. The media didn't cover it. Why would they? There's no footage. There's no controversy. There's nothing to argue about. So it exists only in the memory of the people who were there. A handful of kit staff, a few teammates, a security guard who was supposed to be looking in the other direction. And a young girl who has a wristband that was worn through a professional football match by one of the greatest players who ever lived. Let me break down what that wristband actually represents, because it's not a wristband, it's proof that someone stopped. In a world that moves fast and rewards the people who keep moving, someone stopped. It's proof that communication doesn't require language when the intention is genuine. It's proof that the version of greatness that actually lasts isn't the goals or the trophies. It's the moments where you chose to be present for someone who had no way of rewarding you for it. Nobody was filming. Nobody was going to write about it. Nobody was going to give Cristiano Ronaldo a better contract or a higher rating or a transfer fee because of what happened in that tunnel. He did it because it was the right thing to do. And I've been around enough footballers to know how rare that actually is. Not the gesture itself. Plenty of players are generous when the moment is constructed for them, when the camera is set up and the charity is organized and the narrative is already written. What's rare is the unscripted version. The moment nobody engineered. The kindness that had no infrastructure behind it. Just a man, a tunnel, and a decision made in a handful of seconds that nobody asked him to make. And that's the version of him his teammates can't stop talking about. Not the 40-meter free kick, not the Champions League hat trick, the tunnel. The wristband, the girl who stopped crying. Anyone who's spent real time around elite football clubs knows something the public often doesn't. The players who endure, the ones who get talked about in dressing rooms for decades after they retire, aren't remembered for the stats. They're remembered for the moments that happened when nobody was watching. Those are the moments that define what someone actually is. So remember what I said at the beginning. The media has given you a version of Ronaldo for 20 years. The version built from press conferences and transfer sagas and social media and commercial campaigns. But there's another version, the one that exists in tunnels, after matches, when the cameras are off and the crowd is gone and there's no strategic reason to be anything other than exactly who you are. That version crouched down to the level of a young girl who couldn't hear him. That version figured out how to speak without words. That version took something off his own wrist and put it in her hands. That version didn't do it for you, didn't do it for me, didn't do it for anyone watching. And that, more than any goal he's ever scored, is the thing that tells you who Cristiano Ronaldo actually is. So there you have it, the real story behind a moment nobody saw, and why the moments nobody sees are always the ones that matter most. If this video gave you something, make sure to like and subscribe. There are more stories like this one, the real ones, the ones that didn't make the press releases. I'll see you in the next one.